Hello, everyone. This is The Art of Pivoting Your Life, and I'm Michelle Carbone. I'm a clinical hypnotherapist and intuitive coach, among other things like mindfulness teacher. And on our show, we do a lot of different things. We have people on, which is what we're doing today, but you can call in for advice. And I also just basically talk for 30 minutes and tell you stuff. So we do a variety of things on this show. So today I have with me Stacia Keanne, who is a relationship coach for polyamory and kink, among other things. She's an educator. She works through Alphabet Soup LLC, and we are just gonna talk about how she helps people that are pivoting into different lifestyles and anything else she wants to talk about today. So, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure. And hopefully my lack of, any real recording equipment doesn't help hinder us
Oh,
here.
no, we're good. I got you. So, why don't you start with how did you decide to become a coach in this realm?
Well, I have been in the consensual non-monogamous realm for about 2 decades now. And there really just isn't a lot of opportunities for folks to talk to professionals about how to better their relationships. A lot of what I focus on are non-monogamy and kink dynamics. However, most of the stuff that I work with are things that really are valuable for any relationship style that one chooses, and we don't really teach people to have relationships anymore. So one of my queer platonic partners uh, started Alphabet Soup LLC and encouraged me to get my relationship coaching certification so that I could begin doing this work with them. We do a lot of things around sexuality, gender, just kind of comprehensive relationship stuff. And it just happens that, I have been in non-monogamy and kink for quite a while, and I'd already been educating in those spheres. And so we started creating a lot of content around that.
That's awesome. I love it. I love it when the universe is just like, here,
Do
here's
this
what,
thing.
do this. This is what you're meant to do, help people.
Yeah.
What would you say people's biggest challenges that you're working with?
I think a lot of times, especially when you're dealing with folks who are just opening up a relationship that has previously been monogamous, one of the biggest challenges is disentanglement. Jealousy is an easy answer here that, could take up several episodes of the show, but really a lot of it does come down to disentanglement. And disentanglement is the idea of starting to separate, especially when you're dealing with partners who have been together for a long time, maybe live together. Their lives are very entangled. There are a lot of assumptions that are made within those couples about how time will be spent and how communication will move forward. When you are opening up a relationship, disentangling a lot of those expectations is one of the key issues that really drives a lot of people to kind of loose ends, because they aren't expecting to have so many of their baseline assumptions change.
Yeah.
A lot of it comes down to not assuming that all of your partner's free time is going to be yours. Ensuring that you aren't taking on the responsibility for the emotions or emotional regulation of the other person. Keeping your stuff separate is really, really difficult when you've been so used to entangling your lives in such a mononormative way.
Yeah. I can totally see how that would
Yeah.
be like, oh, well, you're supposed to watch TV with me every night or
Yeah.
whatever, right?
And
Like,
even the concept of just having a show that you watch together, when you are dealing with multiple partners, the idea that this one show or a movie has to be seen with one partner or another can create all kinds of bad feelings. And so working out a lot of those expectations before you're encountering the situations is really, really helpful. In particular, I think a lot of folks who have been in mononormative relationships do have a tendency to assume that they have first dib on a partner's time, that any time that's not specifically scheduled is, theirs to have. But then there's also kind of the flip side of that where, you assume, well, I'm with this person all the time. And so I see them all the time, so why do I need to make a date night with them? And so there can be really a problem with ownership of time, and a problem with our time not really being quality time.
oh yeah, quality time
And
is
and
because watching TV isn't quality time, right? Like,
especially if you're co-parenting, if you're living together, if maybe you're running a business together, if you have all of these various entanglements, there's just so many assumptions that come with that. And there's a lot of codependency that our society really encourages in a more mononormative relationship, and that just really doesn't work when you are going to be trying to pursue non-monogamy in particular. But even if you want to strengthen and increase the health of monogamous relationship, doing some of this work can really help in terms of not creating a lot of codependency and responsibility for stuff that's not yours.
yeah, right. Like, I'm feeling this way and it's your fault kind of stuff
Hmm.
would be
Hmm.
part of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I dealt with codependency in my in my marriage. So it was like waking up to like, oh, that's what's going on.
Yeah.
I'm replacing my father with my husband because he didn't pay attention to me, and I want all of the attention and all of that stuff. So
Yeah.
that's yeah. And what I've seen in some work that I've done in that community is a lot of like insecurity, of course, coming up, but like a lot of that's rooted in childhood, not even in your current situation. It's just,
Yeah.
right, taking you back. Do you do a lot of like
Absolutely.
attachment
Yeah,
work? And
a lot of the way that we interact in our relationships definitely goes back to childhood. Attachment theory has been really monumental in figuring out some of these things. A lot of people are familiar with the concepts around anxious attachment and avoidant attachment. Jessica Fern has written a great book called Polysecure. That
great book.
deals with kind of attachment theory in the non-monogamy spheres that I highly recommend. It's really, the way that we protect ourselves, honestly. And, we don't want to be really, it's difficult because you want to unpack a lot of these things, but you also need to recognize that these are the ways that your psyche created to protect yourself. This is what your psyche did to ensure that the hurts that you had in the past are not visited upon you in the future. But unfortunately, our psyche cannot recognize that the hurts that we have in the past are not necessarily what's happening to us in the present.
Right.
And our feelings are always valid, but our feelings are not always accurate to the situation that we are in, nor are they always reasonable in terms of how intense they are or how much they are telling us the truth about the situations that we're in.
Yeah.
And so we have to be able to learn to acknowledge the things that give us, that create, a trauma response or an activation or something like that, or even just a bad feeling, and acknowledge that that feeling is valid, that feeling is fine. And is that feeling telling us the truth about what's going on? Or
Right.
is it going back to a past trauma? Is it going back to a previous relationship pattern that we may have fallen into?
Yeah, totally. I work with that a lot too. And most of my polyamorous clients have their sessions been on why am I insecure? Like
Mhm.
why, like I should feel secure in this relationship and I don't. Why is that? And so the scenes they go back to, which is what we call the memories, are always interesting and telling because you're
Yeah,
like, oh, when I was 4, this thing happened and I didn't remember that that's what it was. But our subconscious is like,
yeah,
is there,
absolutely.
right? Totally.
Absolutely. And
Right.
it's really important that we give space and give a lot of love to kind of the those parts of ourselves that were created to protect ourselves, while at the same time setting them aside and saying, I appreciate that this is what you are doing to give me, security or stability, and this no longer serves me, and so I have to leave this in my past.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. How do you like what are your recommendations on for people who do get like triggered, whether it's, insecurity, jealousy, envy, whatever. Like what would you if someone was trying to do work by themselves, like what would you say is important to do to work with that?
I think some of the most important things are doing a lot of work with mindfulness and distress tolerance.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of great success and found a lot of value in dialectical behavioral therapy. It's kind of my favorite mode of therapy. And I feel like it can be relevant to a whole host of issues. It's most frequently used for certain personality disorders, but quite honestly, I've seen it work for even the smallest of trauma triggers.
Hmm.
So doing that work on distress tolerance and figuring out, how to be mindful and recognize and pick out and name emotions, because a lot of times we can establish that we're not feeling good, but naming the emotion can be very difficult.
Hmm.
And so doing work on mindfulness and recognizing what your emotions are, and then on distress tolerance and how to manage your feelings, because it's been my experience that the more frequently you experience and work through jealousy, the less frequently it really affects you,
Right.
because you start to figure out that, oh, this is a fleeting feeling, or even if it's a very intense feeling, it's still a temporary feeling. It's a feeling that I can work through. It's a feeling that I know I can get to the other side of,
Yeah.
because so often the only way out is through.
Oh yeah,
And
totally.
so we have to work on those distress tolerance skills, and then work on those underlying insecurities, work on some of those ideas, those mononormative ideas that were taught to us by, society at large, by media and everything else. The idea that, well, if they really loved me, they wouldn't want anyone else. That horrid Johnny Depp quote about, if you love two people, pick the second one, because if you really loved the first one, you wouldn't have fallen in love with the second one. I
Oh yeah,
hate that
totally.
quote so much,
Yeah.
because, and so you have to work on deprogramming some of those ideas.
Yeah.
I found also that doing a lot of work in strengthening relationships, not just your romantic relationships, but putting a lot of effort, time, and energy into platonic relationships and creating platonic partnerships can be very helpful, because we have a tendency to put all of our emotional eggs kind of in one basket when we're monogamous.
Sure.
And when we then transition to polyamory, it can feel like that basket's being threatened. And so, if our emotional eggs are in more than one basket, the threat to one basket feels less catastrophic.
Right, because you've got
And
this whole support system.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you have people who, love you, and that also increases your self-esteem. Because while we can only create our own self-esteem, because it's self self-esteem.
Right. A lot of
We
us rely
can't,
on outside validation for that
yeah,
self-esteem, right?
but creating those creating those relationships, whether it be it, other romantic relationships, other sexual relationships, or just or platonic relationships. And I don't like to say just platonic relationships, because that relegates them to like some kind of underclass or something.
Right.
And I don't think that that's necessarily accurate or good for us, because sometimes our platonic relationships can carry us through things that our romantic or sexual relationships can't.
Oh, yeah, totally. I
And
mean, our friends
so,
are so important.
yeah. And so it's really important to cultivate those outside of your romantic partner relationship. And again, going back to disentanglement, some of the things that you can do, because I'm really not a fan of like tit for tat dating. If you're opening your relationship and your partner has a date tonight, if you happen to also have a date tonight, great. But the idea that you can only have dates on the same night as your other partner, or that you need to go out and find a date in order to really, to avoid feeling bad that your partner is with someone else,
Right.
it isn't really that great. And that's really jealousy avoidance as opposed to jealousy management.
Yeah, I haven't heard it described that way, but I totally agree. Like, I'm not going to just go out with this person just to have a person to
Yeah.
be with. Like, that's using them and that's not right.
Exactly. And that it's not good for you, but and it's not nice to the other person. And so using some of those times maybe to cultivate your friendships and cultivate hobbies that are interesting to you and work on projects that really enhance your own life are ways that you can, address some of those, the feelings and the distress. Again, going back to those distress tolerance skills, a lot of that is, figuring out how you can create kind of certainty and good feelings about how your life is going, regardless of what is happening with your romantic partner. So that you're not putting all of your eggs in that romantic partner's basket, but also not putting all of your, happiness and good feelings and validation on that other person, because even in a monogamous relationship, that becomes a really big strain to that one person. And so creating those connections, and I truly believe that creating connections, be it in a monogamous or non-monogamous context, is really important, because that is how we move beyond this ridiculous individualistic society that we are currently that we are currently suffering under.
Yes.
I really believe that the hyper individualism of, Western society is largely what has brought us to a lot of a lot of the issues that we face today, because I feel like we do not put stock and value in community. And so I would like to see more people, be they monogamous or non-monogamous, work on creating communities.
Oh, yeah. Community is so important. I mean, and I've seen in my work, like I've created a community of Cassandra syndrome people, women so it's like the fact that they have people to connect with, even though it's just on Facebook and I do Zoom meetings, but it's like having that for them is life changing because they feel connected to someone that understands them. And so, like, finding your community, I think, is just can really take you out of a depression, even because it's like we need each other. We're communal beings. Like,
Yeah. And none of us did anything on our own. None of us got anywhere on our own. None of us, it's easy to say no man is an island, but it is very fraught to act as if no man is an island, because we are all interdependent. And and I think that when we find the communities that speak to us best, that is when we can grow most as people. And so, that's for me, it was largely kink and polyamorous communities.
Yeah.
For others, it may be a church group, whatever the case is, you find the people that resonate with you best.
Yeah. And it just feels like you're like, oh, I'm with my people,
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah. I love, like, anytime I go to a reggae concert, I'm like, these are my people. These are my people. Like, I never have a problem at a reggae concert because I meet cool people and I'm like, you're my people.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
and it feels good to find your people. So if you're out there and you don't have any people, like, figure out who your people are, figure out what's important to you, and find your people because we need each
Absolutely.
other, like, so more now than ever. I mean, I think with especially after COVID and
Yeah.
the isolation during that time was so detrimental to people, and
Yeah.
they're still recovering. So it's
It
like,
was definitely a rough time, especially for us extroverts.
yes, it was very, I was like, I need hugs. Like, my husband at the time was
Yeah.
not a big hugger. I'm like, I need physical contact and like,
Primary love language is touch, and also an extrovert. I'm
yeah,
dying.
yes, I was like, please, I need my people. I need hugs. And you know what? I still saw my people because I was like, I had a few people that we still saw because I was like, I don't care. I'm,
Create your pod. That's fine. That's
yeah,
fine.
like I gotta have some people to hug.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, since we just have a couple minutes left, anything you'd like to say, and please give your website or how to contact you as well.
Absolutely. So, a few things that I have going at the moment. So I do coaching through Alphabet Soup. It's thealphabetsoup.com. I am also one of the co-producers of the Right Side of the Slash Weekend, which is a weekend of education for folks who identify as bottoms, submissives, slaves, any kind of S type within the DS dynamic. So D/S, the right side of the slash is S types. So we just had that last month. The next one will be May 30th through June 1st, 2025. You can find us by looking up Right Side of the Slash on Facebook, Instagram, and FetLife. And you can also find me, Stacia Keanne, on Facebook, Ladybug Fairy on FetLife. And yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. And everyone knows by now, if you've listened to the show, my website's sendmymichelle.com, and of course, hypnotherapy, coaching. And I'm having a retreat in Mexico November 1st through the 6th for Cassandra syndrome. So if you've been in an ongoing traumatic relationship or think you have Cassandra syndrome, and I describe it in detail on my website, please reach out and you can join me on that. And we'll wrap up for this day. But thanks everyone for joining us, and thank you, Stacia, for being on with me. I appreciate it. I love talking about this. All this interesting relationship stuff is like
yeah,
it's like my community, and I love talking about it.
absolutely. I totally understand. My
It's
pleasure.
like I love having all these different, different dynamics, and I think people need to know that, there's not one right way to have a relationship. It's about
Absolutely.
finding what's best for you. So everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.